Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. We are on a mission to transform healthcare where all equally benefit by building a robust, dynamic, diverse community. So glad you could join us. Well, this is an awesome Thursday. It is no ordinary Thursday here on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. We got a special guest, Kat McDavid, and she is the president and founding partner of Ensena, a consulting supporting organization operating in the healthcare sector. So that's good. We are talking about healthcare. She is the head of a consultancy, market access, and public affairs practice in a nationwide expert in data acquisition strategy and data use agreements, including the exchange and use of sensitive information covered under CFR 42, Part 2. Previously, Kate served as a chief of external affairs and chief marketing officer for Collective Medical. I love that. The largest network for care coordination in the United States. She led the company's government and public affairs, market access, marketing, and advocacy and public relations functions. Collective Medical was acquired by Point Click Care in 2020, the nation's largest senior care technology platform. Kat is also the founder, CEO, and board chair of Zoria Foundation and the foundation's award-winning Mothers in Medicine Fund. Zoria Foundation provides cash grants primarily for childcare for women working in the healthcare industry as an advocate for women in the workplace. Kat started the Zoria Foundation to bridge the gap for women as they work towards their own definition of professional success. Well, man, this is so awesome to have you, Kat. And so today we're going to talk about, tell us a little more about what we're going to talk about. It is product in healthcare and why the best product doesn't win. So if there's anything I didn't leave, left out or anything else you want to add, please do.
No, you got it. I appreciate it.
Well, man, we appreciate you. I really am glad I know we were talking earlier. We've talked before. You're going back and forth in Alaska. You're always busy. I saw a post recently, something about your work-life balance or lack of thereof, but you really find the time to make everything happen. And I thank you. I feel very privileged and special. And also all these amazing internet digital friends, hopefully building as we speak, because we have great guests like you on. But so what's going on with this product thing in healthcare? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I am a consultant, right? I'm pretty much a lifelong consultant. The only real job I ever had was Collective Medical. And when you're a consultant, it's like dog years, right? You're seeing multiple companies every year, sometimes every month, and trying to figure out how you're going to position their products. And I have seen a lot of terrible products. And I've seen a lot of founders who are just absolutely in love with their product and have forgotten about the fact that you need to have a problem to solve in order for your product to be successful. And it's a huge problem, right? People become, I've said this quote many times before, people become so in love with their product that they've forgotten about the problem, or they never found the problem to begin with. So that's what we're talking about.
I love that. And it's like, what is it? The baby don't what is the product? I'm going, I don't know. It's like, don't tell me my baby's ugly or something. They're so in love with their baby, the product. I've heard that expression. I don't know.
And here's the thing, a lot of times that product solves a thing, right? It might not be a huge problem, but it makes something easier. I think what many founders, product people, whoever it might be, right? Whoever's really in love with that product, what they forget is that, are you solving something that a user has asked you to do and you've productized it? Or have you solved a problem that someone is willing to pay for, right? And that's a pretty big delta, right? I think a lot of times these organizations, whoever it might be, again, a product leader, even a salesperson, right? They're talking to a user and they say, hey, I really want this red button over here in the upper right. Cool. And then they go and say, well, our product is better because we have a button in the upper right. We talked to a user and that's what they told us to do. And a CIO or whoever's the purchaser or approver of that product is like, yeah, we really don't care, right? There's a lot to product and product marketing beyond just like our thing works really well and we have a lot of features and functionality and it's awesome, right? That does not make your product good and it does not make it sell.
So I guess the little I know from iCore and the blank canvas model by Steve Blank or whatever, what do you recommend? More market research, user experience to get it right. What would you think is a good starting point to make this product right?
So I will caveat this by saying I make fun of a lot of over processed books about what one methodology that someone used once that works. I very much advocate going back to the basics on this, and it works, right? It's like fundamentals of product marketing. What is your problem? Is it urgent? Is it pervasive? And is there willingness to buy? And very often you need a yes on all three of those, right? And very often there's no on all three, right? And I think people often forget to sit there and look at that and be honest with themselves about the money they're spending, the direction they're going in, and really evaluate what has to happen to get this thing off the ground. So there's a lot of wild methodologies out there. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of famous people you can follow. But if you can answer yes on all three of those questions, which are hardcore basics, then you have something you can work with. And many people forget to do that.
Well, I'm going to throw something out because I was just thinking as I was really lucky to have you come on and talk about this topic, which I think is so important. I was thinking just about the big like Epic versus Cerner. And I've never really heard too many people liking these products, but they're in the marketplace. And could you dive through maybe a little bit to like why, some of these products, I mean, I don't know if you've gone through some different EMRs, but maybe sort of the user design, the experience versus these big mammoths and what your thoughts are on that with, the marketplace and how they are dominant, but maybe they're not the best. And maybe I'm totally wrong. And you can argue with me, say, Michael, Epic is amazing. So anyway.
So I want to start out by saying I've never represented either of these companies. So this is my opinion as an observer and someone who has represented a lot of organizations that have used these products. So, I don't know the deep user interface design of either solution. But so what you're talking about here, the acute EHR market is crowded, late, right? It's beyond any of some of these early emerging markets where the tactics you use are going to be a little different or the overall strategy is going to be different. I think so. These two products, definitely market leaders, number one and number two in the acute sector, right? They really had a tough race. They were in the race to the bottom during the high tech era, meaningful use, when the money flooded the market, the incentives were out there. There were a lot of competitors entering in, and these two emerged as as market leaders, which I think there's a lot to that, right? And I think when we're looking at the EHR market specifically, it's arguably one of the more crowded product categories that we have in healthcare because of that government incentive program. We're a quasi-regulated space, so things operate a little bit differently. One of the ways that a late to market product like these, not late to market, but it's late to market now, right? If you were to come in and say, I'm going to disrupt this market, it would be really hard. And the approach you take would be much different. So what these two had, to start, they had, Epic has been around for quite a while. It was before the market race. They were there as well as Cerner, right? And so the approach that they had that was, I think, useful, and again, this is outside looking in, I did not market these products, is that they had strong keystone customers, and they were able to leverage those and work through on a reputation sale, which I think is useful in the enterprise space. So, features and functionalities at this point, when you're in a later market, that's useful. And right now, these two do compete on those things, right? They add more features, they add things that are going to make workflow easier. Cost cutting, not necessarily something that they engage in unless they're in a competitive bid, most likely, right? But a different kind of market at this point. So in this case, they definitely are products that won. Did they have the best features compared to the entire market? Who knows? That was a while ago. But they won on other things, right? They were the ones that were able to solve those problems most effectively.
And how about Google Health?
What about it?
I don't know. I just know they tried. I was just thinking before we were getting on the show, just some of these companies, that these big tech companies that have tried to come in the marketplace, and they just didn't get enough traction. And I,
The PHR specifically, the personal health record work that they did.
well, and I'm just saying in general, and so we can just take this off the table and go to the next one if you want.
Oh, I mean, if we're talking about personal health records, like that space specifically, we can totally talk about that. I wanted to make sure that's what you wanted to get at.
Whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for you.
Yeah. So just broadly, several years ago and still there are a lot of companies trying to get into the personal health record space. There's many more goes at it. I think one of the problems that a lot of these companies had, right? Many of them just, crashed and burned or got out of the market, is that there's a lot of discussion about consumerism, right? Like, are patients consumers? Do they care about getting their health records? And I think, again, this goes back to, is the problem urgent? Is it pervasive? And is there willingness to buy? I think many consumers are not. It's not an apples to apples between a patient, right? In a patient scenario, it's not like you can just go out and go shopping, right? This is something I argue about a lot with a lot of people, right? It's very difficult to act as a consumer in the healthcare space because of the way it's regulated and because of the way it's gated for people. And I think some of these companies underestimated the demand from the patient community and the consumer community in general about how much they were willing to leverage a tool to gather their own information. I think it's changing, but I think the change is slow. And I think that was one of the problems. The market wasn't quite ready.
We have a guest, Priyanka. She has a question, kind of going back to your beginning when you were talking about product, sort of product market fit. So she was asking, can you talk about founder market fit versus product market fit, the right founder to solve the problem and deliver the product or service?
Yeah. Hey, Priyanka. We kind of know each other. Yeah. So I think Priyanka's in a role, I think, where this is super relevant, where she's working with a lot of new companies that are launching. And I think that we see this a lot, right? You see a founder who just really comes from a space and really understands the space. And many times, I think I understand the question, Priyanka. Please clarify if I'm going in a different direction. But a really passionate founder can move a product to a certain point without it necessarily being ready, just because they have a network, they understand the space really well, and they can really articulate things that others can't. And then you see the scaling problem, right, or the founder's dilemma. As soon as you get that Series A and you start scaling, and you have to scale to a sales team and bring that up, a lot of times the problem isn't there, or the market isn't ready to buy in the way that the founder was able to push the deal. So we see a lot of companies kind of crash and burn after their Series A and have to try something new. And that's really tricky too, because it's really hard to suss that out, right? Is this something that you just have an incredibly charismatic founder who can make this move? Or is this something that is scalable and the market's ready and the problem is sufficient enough that it can move?
And we have another question, product question for Kat. If not already on the list, what is the decision-making process to decide to sunset, kill a product, service line, et cetera?
Yeah.
From Susan Clark.
Hey, Susan's my friend too.
Hey, Susan.
She promised me she'd be on the porch with a glass of wine. I hope that's the case. So, I mean, this is tricky, right? Because you're talking about something that's already been launched. So we already kind of missed the opportunity to say, hey, this probably isn't ready yet. And I think this is just like a hard graveyard question. It's like looking at the situation that you have going on, right? Is it selling? A lot of times you just have real shitty marketing, to be very frank. You either have a really terrible sales team that doesn't get it, or you haven't done the work to position the product appropriately with messaging. You can try to change those things. And that's going out in the market. It's doing your research again, talking to users and buyers, right? Big difference between what a user wants and a buyer wants. A user will tell you they want the button in the upper left or upper right, wherever. And a buyer might be like, this is the dumbest. This doesn't make sense. And it's number 72 on my priority list, right? So I think doing that research again, looking to see if it's a problem with execution or if it's a product market fit problem, kind of like Priyanka was saying earlier or suggesting earlier. I think if you find that like the market isn't there yet, you can get the market there if you have a gigantic budget, right? You can force the market to realize there's a problem if you spend a lot of money and you have a runway. Most companies in our space that are, doing the Series A thing do not have that time nor that money. And that's when you have to decide to sunset something, or sunset your whole company if you just have that one core product, which most do at that phase. So I would recommend, if something's not being sold, that you go back and do that research again, understand the difference between users and buyers, and remap out your positioning first. Because I think, sometimes you can salvage it. The other thing is to the question Priyanka asked about founders. I think I was answering her question. Sometimes you, in an enterprise sale especially, or like a lot of the sales I deal with are like more convener level, right? Very, very small group of buyers, but pretty massive reach. Sometimes it is the person, right? It might be your sales leader, or it might be whoever it might be that you've passed that off to. So there's a lot of ways to evaluate that. They're hard decisions because it might mean getting rid of someone or moving someone out. But I mean, you kind of have to do it, otherwise you're going to tank.
All right, we're going to bring up another one. And you don't have to, we can do the disclaimer if you want to. Amazon Care.
So I'm going to pass on this one.
Okay. So I will say
172 NDAs and
all right.
I'm sorry, I can't do that one.
No, that's awesome. All right. So
the Apple Watch?
Yeah.
All right, so what are you asking me here? Are you asking why?
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to product. When you're working with a founder, what are you finding? Like, where's your starting point to help as your experience in healthcare? What do you kind of use as your navigation system to kind of help get that assessment for product?
Yeah. So if I'm working with a founder, so are we talking like early stage companies?
Yeah. Kind of what you've been talking about, because I kind of missed the mark. I'm talking about like the biggest of the biggest. So we're going to,
we could talk about big companies. In a lot of cases, the big companies succeed because they have the firepower to educate the market on the problem they have. So massive research teams, right? Big companies are big for a reason. I can give you some examples of smaller companies after this, or like talk about some of the sticky products that people try to replace and why they can't. But I think specifically when working with a founder who is maybe early stage, going into Series A, maybe we're talking about a Series B, right? How I'll evaluate taking on a client, because again, this is a super small space. I have a bajillion NDAs, and we have conflicts of interest everywhere we turn. So we do have to really evaluate the founders we work with, and if we think that product is going to be effective. We go back to the fundamentals of product marketing. We interview them pretty significantly about, is that product something that people want to buy? Is it something that people want to buy in mass? And if not, do we have the resources to get it done? One of the ways we go about that is, honestly, we do a ton of qualitative market interviews, especially because I'm mostly working in the enterprise space, right? So I'm selling to hospitals, health plans, state governments, HIEs, hospital associations, like larger groups. It's I think more effective to have the conversations with people one-on-one to see what the real issues are. We do a lot of in-person work as well. So we fly out very often, watch people work, watch how their workflow is going. If this is something that's just like a little fix to a very large problem where they're still going to have to buy an extra solutions, we look at all that. But a lot of what we get done is talking to both the users and the buyers. And very different. And then we also ask them, who's the person who would say no to this in your organization? And we talk to them very extensively. I'm one of those people who spends a lot of time on the negative. So I talk to blockers most extensively to see, like, what's going to be the friction process in this deal? Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's just that someone loves, like you said, they have a baby who they think is beautiful, a process they created themselves in 2009 to move documents through, and that's what they're going to do, right? So I think really taking your time to understand the problem is the most effective way to decide whether or not a product's going to work, whether you take on a client, whether you join a company at a certain level. I think that's really key for a lot of individuals in our space, right? It's small, so you move around a lot, and you have to really decide where your next step is going to be. But as an example, more talking about maybe companies deep in health tech, as opposed to some of these larger brands. One thing that I often talk about with founders when we take on a new project, or if they're a first-time founder, is we talk about the fax machine, which is like so not sexy. But like, I will argue that that is one of the stickiest products in our space. Like, people can't kill it. The fax machine is like still super alive and well, right? And it's like, listen, it is not effective. I mean, it gets the job done, right? But it's not sexy. It's not streamlined. It's like totally old timey. Everybody's been trying to kill it for 1,000 years, right? Like, I went to some party at Health or Vive 2 years ago. It was the Credo party, and they were smashing fax machines or something. like everybody hates the fax machine, but you cannot get rid of it. So I always encourage people in our space to really look at that and say, why? Why can't we kill it? Why haven't we been able to get rid of this thing? And it's in workflow, right? There are workflows designed around that sucker that, like, again, you are going to have a hard time unwinding. It's a cost issue, right? It gets the job done. It's not it hasn't been regulated out of existence. So there's a lot we can learn from the fax machine. And I encourage people to do that. Why can't we kill the fax machine? Exactly. Because it's still there. It's still there, and it's sticky. We even have companies that, like, they're doing the e-fax, right? Like, it's still there. But it's a really good example that I think that people need to really consider and look into, right? So you want to kill the fax machine. Is your problem that urgent? Is it pervasive? And is there willingness to buy, right? And oftentimes they're like, no, the fax machine is like good enough, and it's going to be good enough for a long time.
Is there anything that could make the fax machine better? I mean, geez, if the fax machine is here, I would just try to do an add-on to a fax machine. What can you do to make a fax machine better, quicker ink? I don't know.
Well, to get rid of the fax machine, right? This is like a quasi-regulated world, and depending on what category you're in, you're very regulated. So if someone wants to replace a fax machine, you have to understand all of the different workflows that are built around that fax machine. You have to understand all of the problems that it solves, right? It's not just one problem. So if you're going in there and you're doing e-referrals or something, right? You're solving one problem, and that fax machine is still solving 10 others. So the likelihood that you're gonna displace the incumbent is still pretty small. So you have to think about all that. You have to map it all out. For sure.
Yeah, so we had a shout out from Susan, something at HIMSS where this was kind of interesting. So Susan was, it's kind of a statement. Susan Clark was saying she was shocked how many vendors at HIMSS told them that the specialty was eFax. So
yeah, it's a thing, and I don't want to get too hung up on faxes because they make me sad too.
And Priyanka has, I see AI somewhere in this question, so that's a real catchy thing right now. Can you discuss how you think AI will be woven into healthcare or health products and the implications of AI? That's the first question.
Yeah, so I think that we're seeing a lot of little ways it's going to work now. And I think, like, AI has been in healthcare for a while, right? I think it's like blown up recently, and that's exciting. I think how we're going to see it, because you're going to have the bell curve, right? The early adopters, right? People who are interested in trying those things out and making it happen. And then I think that you're going to have some of these technologies that are really, really, really focused on AI, where it's not just part of the solution or something that's making it better, like clinical terminology and things like that. So I think we're going to see a little bit of the hype cycle here. And I think that to those companies that are able to be successful in this space, I think, again, it's going to be going out there and helping users understand, is this something they need, and why do they need it, and will it make their lives better? I think at this point, it's going to be a little bit of education on top of that. Another reason why the best product doesn't win, lack of education. And I think that we will see some crashing and burning, right? And that might make this space a little ugly for a while. But overall, I think we've seen a lot of companies already incorporating AI into their tools, and we'll continue to see them do that and try them out, and then we'll see some epic crashes. That's my prediction. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I think you're right. We probably are in the midst of a growing AI bubble with investment. Anyway. But what are you excited about with product? What gets you excited?
What gets me excited? So what gets me excited about product is not product, right? It's people who are smart about how they get that product to market. I'm not one of those people that's going to sit there and like decide what's a good product or make something, right? That's not me, but I can figure out how to get it in the market and how to get it to go. So what excites me about new products are people that understand the full go-to-market scenario. And this is something else that like makes me really mad. And I rant at founders who think that they build it and people are just going to show up and knock on their door. And it's not all marketing, right? It's not like you don't have to have a bajillion-dollar budget, but you do know how to you do have to understand how to position your stuff well, how to talk about it, how to understand the benefits and value, and how to map out where you even need to be there. You asked earlier about Epic and Cerner. I'm not going to draw a 2x2 for you guys, but if we're thinking about a 2x2, that is a late to market features functionality market, right? That's like over there in the unsexy quadrant. We're done with that. Most of what we're seeing in like emerging technologies, like Priyanka asked about AI, right? That's up there in like, you're selling on emotion and you're in the upper right. You're selling on emotion and you're selling on a practical function. Right.
FOMO too, right? FOMO.
Right. The emotion of it, right? You're like, this is
yeah.
something exciting. I need to get there, right? You have to understand what market you're in. Most people don't. Most people say we have like the coolest functions and features and it's awesome. Like a lot of these AI companies that we're going to see like totally bang into a wall, they're going to be talking about all like the technical bullshit behind their AI solution and not why that matters to a user or a buyer. And it's going to be awesomely bad. I think we're already seeing a lot of that, right? We see everybody's writing these things about, why their algorithm is the best. Who actually cares at this point? No one cares. But the people that are going to be successful are the ones that are going to appeal to that emotional newness value, and then talking about how they can deliver on it. So some of the other later market technologies that we see are more on value function, right? So still talking about that ROI story. That's exciting to me when someone can actually tell me why their product has value. That's really cool. But yeah, I get most unexcited by someone who comes in and has like some features list that makes me want to throw up and that absolutely no one cares about, right? That is like, bleh. And that might work in some markets, it might, but it's not going to work in anything that's anything close to emerging or early stage.
I like how you describe your process, really getting the buyer, getting the users, the feedback, and really that process. It seems like, but then you earlier also said you're not prescribing to some like grid or such a methodology that makes you stuck to the methodology. So it seems like you're having the art, the science, you've done enough, you see patterns. It really is a skill set that you've developed. And so I could imagine, though you talked about the problem, right? You're looking at the problem because those blocks, that blocker. Can you walk us through that a little bit? Like how to untangle that knot?
Untangle, like the overall process?
Or yeah, I was talking a lot. Sorry. I just like that. Maybe the first question is just your process, and then the second one is that pain point with that blocker. Like what sort of in your experience, how to really understand that problem and see if you can get over that and help that organization through.
Yeah. So to start out my process, this is going to sound super terrible. You know how like when people ask a really good salesperson how they do it, and they have no idea. Like that's kind of like I really couldn't tell you like the actual process to how it gets done. I will tell you what I've done, and that's that I do read a lot. I look at a lot of different case studies. I've had a lot of exposure, and I've had a lot of my own personal failures, right? Trying to launch things and not having it go, and that's a lot of good pattern recognition. The more failures, the better. Unfortunately, for some old clients, that it's probably not the best, but the future ones certainly benefit. But I do think like having an understanding of a lot of the different methodologies is great. I don't stick to one. The only one that I'll say I absolutely stick to is like old hardcore product marketing methodology, which is those 3 questions, right? Urgent, pervasive, willing to buy. But from there, I think you really have to understand what market you're in, and not by what market. Obviously, we're in healthcare. It's all I do. Like, don't know anything else. But what stage of the market are you in? And that's what I meant by, are you early? Are you late to market? Are you starting to get like near-term competitors, right? Early to market is very, very different, right? You have to really understand how to educate the market on what the problem is, and you have to have some runway. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things that we kind of map out. I say we being, my whole company, because we all deal with a lot of these different things too. But starting with answering those questions, because if one of those is a no, it might be that you're early to market and you have to really evaluate what you're going to do and if it's going to be worth it at this point. And then you asked about blockers, right? So when you're kind of the next phase of what I do after I answer those 3 questions and understand if my market's early, late, whatever, it's pretty easy to know if you're late. Like if we're suddenly representing a telehealth company, it's pretty late to market, right? Which doesn't mean you can't win. It just means that your approach is different. After that, then we go into really understanding the buyer journey, customers and everything like that. So, and that's where you get the most intel, in my opinion. I make a big distinction, like I said, between users and buyers. If someone tells me they've only interviewed users who have no buying authority, that's a problem, right? Not understanding the overall organizational buying process. A lot of this stuff isn't fun, right? It's not fun for someone who's really, and that's what's sad too. A lot of these companies and founders, right, who are trying to make these solutions, they in many cases are former users, right? They might be a former nurse social worker, and they really care, but they haven't gotten out of that loop to figure out how this could actually become something that's purchased, how it gets implemented, how much time that's going to take, understanding IT workload, right? Those are the things that you have to do and spend the bulk of your time with. I think it's pretty easy to answer the first 3 questions. You can probably do it on a call, right? And then from there, it's going into that deeper research, which can take a lot of time, depending on how committed you are to touching various different organizational personas.
Well, Kat, we're about a little more than halfway through. Please help me direct us to the right product market fit in this conversation. I don't want to miss it with you, the audience, and this opportunity here. I'm easily able to go down a wrong rabbit hole. So help me make this the best experience.
So one thing that I like to talk about in this, it's actually a non-healthcare example. So do you know the product or project management software Asana?
I've used it. I know the 4 dots. I think it's like the pink sort of, is that the color, right? I think it's still on my iPhone, but I haven't used it much, right?
So I love Asana, right? And this is an example of this is another why the best product doesn't win example. So there's this great thread on Twitter, which I can find and send to you if you're interested. And I actually forget the name of the company that they competed against, but there's a founder who actually I think ran a consultancy. Oh, I can find his name real quick. And he and his team developed his own software product that was an Asana competitor before Asana showed up, if that makes sense. So built it according to user specifications, really spent a lot of time doing product and dev. His name is Andrew Wilkinson. And I think it's amazing because he tweets about his journey getting eaten whole by Asana. And it is it's kind of like a little mini masterclass in why the best product doesn't win. So he goes on, it's this super long tweet thread, again, I'll send it, but talks about really cared about the people using this product, really put a lot of time into it. They were doing well. He was making money off of it as kind of like a new side hustle to his consultancy. He was funneling a lot of the consultancy's profits into it, right? And it looked like it was taking off, right? And then kind of all of a sudden, as he describes it, competitors entered the space. And one of those was Asana. And there were others, there still are. There's plenty of other ones you can buy on the market today. And the first launch of Asana was kind of like, meh, mine's better. Right? Mine's better. We have more features. We have more functions. It's great. Everybody loves us. We've got this. And then Asana raised money. I think they raised like a pretty significant round. And all of a sudden they had a sales team. They had marketing, right? They had a team that was developed for support, and he had nothing, right? He's still bootstrapping it. He's still focused on building new features and functions based on user feedback. All of a sudden, Asana starts totally kicking his ass. This is like, I mean, I'm not summarizing it as well as I should, but just totally kicked his ass. And I think it was he funneled millions of dollars trying to kind of make up for that initial gap where he was like, no, the best product wins. I got this. And I think one of his last quotes, let me see if I can pull it up. So the last part of this tweet thread is, one day I looked up and it slapped me in the face. It's better. Their marketing is better. Their product is better. Their features are better. Their enterprise support is better. Their integrations are better. They won, we lost. So this is like one of, like, I just like love this story. I mean, it's terrible. The poor guy lost $1 bajillion on something that he loved and his team cared about. But I think it shows like it is about way more than having something shining and flashy. It's about like the whole package and how you support your customer and understand their journey and where they're going next.
Yeah, I'm learning so much, and I know the audience as well, because they keep on asking questions. And I hope after this, usually what I do is a follow up. I put it on the different RSS, whatever, the different podcasts. And I want to put a little mention and link to that gentleman who had a failure and just got gobbled up by Asana. I think that's a really good resource and reference out there. I'm going to put up another question. It's a little long. You might need to help me read it at least. But this is from a buddy of mine, George, and it's, what are good ways healthcare team members can communicate why clinical safety measures or parameters are important? So we'll stop. That's the first question. I and others have multiple stories when, and communicating these types of safety issues to product managers, and only to either be dismissed or worse, contradicted because of being perceived as negative.
Okay, so I think George is talking about dealing with your internal product, your own product team, and trying to get them to address an issue from probably market feedback. I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah, I imagine George, he is a doctor, I believe serves as a chief medical officer, just wants to make sure there's compliance, safety, patient safety in the organization that he's maybe worked or advised, and working with the product managers to not see him as negative, as concerning about patient safety, right? Like, we don't want to have a product that kills people. Like, maybe like, all right. So anyway.
Yeah, it could not be the best product. So that, yeah. So when my team has tried to give internal feedback to product teams, and when I was working internally, right? If this is a compliance issue, and it appears it is, I mean, that's a pretty hard line. I'm actually surprised to hear that you wouldn't be able to get a product manager to listen to you on that and address that, because that sounds really bad. But I may be misunderstanding your question. When we deliver feedback to product teams in general, whether it's your product is not compliant or not, let's just assume that this is not what I'm reading. Oftentimes we have to get what we've had to do, and this is not to be mean about product teams, right? They're very busy people. They have a lot going on. We've had to bring the user feedback, how it will impact overall projections for sales. Like, what is the revenue risk for you not addressing this? And then how do we help them reprioritize? Because again, they're working off a prioritization list. They have a lot of things going on. They have things in their product roadmap that they don't want to change. That really sucks. I have great empathy for that. So when we've had to make changes like that in the past, it has been that, here's the feedback. Here's why this is non-compliant, if that's actually the case, or here's why this is something we have to address because of competitive pressure, because of patient safety issues, and then helping them understand the revenue risk so that they can reprioritize. It has never worked for me walking in and saying, you need to get this done right now. You need to reprioritize your entire roadmap. That usually gets me shown out the door. But if I'm able to show revenue impact, overall impact to a overall stable user base, that's what's helped me move the needle. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I hope that is helpful.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful about the just showing them the ROI or the loss of ROI or whatever, the risk, revenue. I
Yeah.
also think there might be a little disconnect there. The product could be more technical oriented, coming from fast and break things. And so I imagine there could be a misalignment there. There's another question from Gerdup. How would you recommend end users, buyers, including clinicians and executives, getting better at building a product that can be successful in the marketplace?
Yeah. If we're talking about clinician executives, which I think is what you're asking here, get better build. Yeah. So we see that a lot, like a founder who's a physician who's been dealing with a certain problem. A big problem that I see in this scenario is that the clinician executive has only been at one organization. You've heard the dumb saying, right? If you've seen one IDN, you've seen one IDN. The solution that they build if they don't take the time to look outside, have peer conversations at other institutions, they might build something, but it's a great workflow tool for just UPMC as an example. And UPMC is pretty good at, like, they pump out a lot of companies, they incubate a lot, but just as an example, it might not translate over to Prov. We might not understand exactly what their problems are and how they build their organization. So a big please do that I would suggest for this question is making sure those clinician executives, clinician founders, or user founders go out and talk to other organizations, and more than just one other one, right? Like, do a broad sample, take a tour, go visit all your friends, and spend some time and understand that this is something that would actually work outside of your own org and your own experience and how you can scale it.
That was a great answer to that. So is it more of a culture thing? What are you thinking that's going on at different organizations that's really important to assess that?
I think a lot of it's culture. I think a lot of these, some of these organizations are super complex. And I think that a product that my team will not take on to represent is a product that's been built for one organization. We actually see this with, larger organizations too, like HIEs is a really good example. Sometimes an HIE is built for a very specific state environment with very specific state rules, and it doesn't translate to the state next door. And despite best efforts to scale it out, right? And I think that's an example of building a product for like a very, very small problem that you're never going to sell. It's never going to scale. I think that, we will not take on a product like that to represent. We won't, if it's built for one organization and they want to make it work elsewhere, and they haven't done the research to figure out that it's going to work everywhere. It's not our cup of tea. Some other organizations will take that kind of thing on and help them actually build it so it can scale. That's not our jam.
That's fascinating. Well, we're coming towards the end. We have a few more minutes. Anything you want to hit out of the park?
I would say one thing that I think is really important for product teams in general, whether you're product marketing where you're already kind of straddling different organizations, or you are in another part of the org, to the person who asked about, how do we get feedback to product, right? Anywhere you are in the org, I think this is important in the market, and I think it's important internally, is you have to be able to navigate and understand the incentives of the people who you're working with, much like you would a user or a buyer. So I think that very oftentimes, marketing is like really big here. Like, it's really key. You have to be able to communicate to the market why the heck your thing is good, why you should buy it, and how you buy it. And I think oftentimes that's an afterthought from product teams. And I think the more that leaders of individual teams can build coalitions and build relationships to get that, to get their feedback in early and to make a difference in how something is launched, the better. That's another thing that I see go badly. Is the product might be sound, the problem is totally worth solving, there is money to buy it, people want to buy it, it isn't executed in market effectively, and it'll fail. And then if it is really good, if you've answered yes to all three of those questions that I mentioned, and it is a really good product market fit, then someone else is going to get there, and the second mouse gets the cheese for sure.
Why are demos so bad?
Why are demos so bad? Because people don't invest in them.
I mean, it's like the end part. It's like you're having a party, but you don't have anything to eat at the party.
Yeah, I think when Priyanka mentioned the founder situation, like sometimes, like a charismatic seller, especially in an enterprise situation where you're not selling to that many groups, but the deals are huge. Like sometimes a charismatic seller can do it with a PowerPoint, right? And so I think that some of those early successes result in people cutting corners on their demo. For sure. But a good demo is meaningful. I actually know some buyers that actually refuse to watch demos.
Mm-hmm.
I think for this very reason.
Yeah, it's like it's like just send me the video, so I can put it on like Netflix, 2x, so I can just go through it or whatever. But any last things that you would like to give a shout out to your friends, your peeps, any causes? I know you're doing some great stuff. Anything else?
No, I mean, the last thing I'll say about this is that, care about your problem, spend more time with your problem than you do with your product. Honestly, like get to know it, get snuggly with it, revisit it often. It's very easy to lose sight of the problem you're trying to solve. For sure. Make friends with everybody and make sure that people have an avenue to give you honest feedback. If you are someone that's launching a product or trying to save a product, as Susan mentioned, for sure, make sure that you have open lines of communication, because lack of feedback also kills good things, for sure.
Well, we still have questions coming in, but we just can't go on forever. Maybe next time we'll have to have it again. It's been so awesome having you here, Kat. Yeah,
thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you just coming, and this has been amazing. And before we leave, how can people connect with you? How would you like them to reach out to you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. Kat McDavitt is how you can find me on there. You can find me on Twitter with Kat McDavitt with no spaces. For sure. I share a lot of opinions on both platforms.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
Now, I think, as you mentioned earlier, I also run the Zoria Foundation. So that is my way to give back to clinicians in our space, right? I've been able to profit off of a lot of technologies that profit off of a lot of clinicians. So I want to make sure that we're able to keep them in mind. Those are important people that we often underappreciate. So check that out. It's zoriafoundation.org. And again, I'm president of Insena. So that's just INNSENA.com if you want to check us out.
All right. Well, we're going to close out here. 1 second. Friends, it's been such a great journey today on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Feel free to follow us. Just type in Planetary Health First, Mars Next on the internet. Until next time.